The Art Lewis Show for today. Coming up later this month, the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society will have a very special presentation from a very special person who happens to be my guest this morning, and he is the one and only Rick Mixter. Good morning.
Art, it is such a pleasure to be back in your studio. And just seeing your smile is worth every hour I put into the car getting here.
So, introduce our gate crasher.
Oh, my God. Don Moore has been such a close friend for so long, a current president, a longtime president, and in the leadership of what we call the Dons, the mafioso of the River Historical Society. And, Don, I'm just so thrilled that you're here this morning.
Well, it's always a pleasure, and it's fun in capital letters.
Don is here. He wants to spend a little bit of time promoting some event coming up on the 21st, is it?
21st.
Tell us about it. What is it?
Saturday the 21st, Rick will be presenting his program. The title, Rick?
We're going to call it Valley Girls because it's about ships that were built in the Saginaw Valley, and most of them are underwater because those are the best ones for me to explore. But we're going to talk about a lot of the famous ones. The ship that found Titanic was built on the Saginaw River in Bay City, the Nore. So there's going to be so much to talk about, and with all of my talks, we'll have interviews with people. We'll have film footage from Defoe. We'll talk about Davidson shipyards.
And
it'll be a good time.
To increase the audience, we're going to rename it Rick Talks About Girls.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, it's all my Valley girls. Now, my wife's going to love that.
Normally we meet at Trinity Episcopal Church at 6:30 on the third Saturday, but this month we'll be out at our museum and nautical gift shop at the Bay City Town Center on the corner of State and Wilder in Bay City. That'll be at 6:30, and our location is right near the center court next to the K Jewelry store.
Any cost for somebody to attend?
Free.
No, free.
And that
in
usually
capital
brings
letters.
so many people that they pack the museum and then they bring them out into the hallway too, which, these guys do, I think, 7 different presentations a year. And to have me back every year is the highest honor of all. To me, I get to kick off not only the Bay County Historical Society's second Saturday series every year for the last 25 years, but to come back every year and to see all my friends, not only with the society, but so many people that show up. It's
for
amazing.
Those that don't know, Rick was around here in television for quite a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
How long?
Boy, I started with you here at SGW answering phones, and that would have been in 84, 85. Eric Gila, I remember watching his boy who was like 2 years old. And then I was on the air at IOG as Rick Collins, and then I went to Channel 12 as a reporter, and was there for 4 years, and then TV5 from 89 to 89 till 97.
You were there
like that.
part of the Mike Avery era.
Yes, I was lucky enough. Mike came from Channel 12 and came to TV5 about the same time, a year or two before me. And then Mike broke off the outdoor show almost 2.5 years, 3 years before I left. So I got to see not only the synergy of his show coming together and then eventually becoming a radio show, but I got to see this genius build a network of incredible radio stations like this one.
For a while.
I was lucky to have him as a partner, and he was literally a guy that was more of the business sense. Even though we were both journalists, and brought in great clients too. I mean, to work in hunting and fishing is a dream for me.
Well,
I just do more underwater than I do otherwhere else.
Your idea of fishing is taking a submarine down and
Talking to the burbot, you bet.
So, how many shipwrecks are in the Great Lakes?
We will argue for the next 2 hours about how many, because most people say around 12,000.
1,000?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you think about this, as we go from 1679, when the first commercial vessel, if you will, LaSalle came up, and almost got sunk off of Saginaw Bay, all the way to the present time, this was the way to move things.
12,000.
Oh, 300 years of navigation on the lakes.
I'm not a diver, but if I were a diver, I could almost dive anywhere and be within a few hundred feet of a wreck someplace.
You could, and since 1960, we've seen incredible amounts of divers, and the peak being from 60, 70, 80. Most of the shallow shipwrecks were all discovered. Now what we're seeing is a technology that's allowing us to go much deeper. So
No.
we're seeing record numbers being found.
I saw something on YouTube the other day, and I can't remember what it was now, but it had to do with the Edmund Fitzgerald and some kind of an electronic scan that they were doing that gave them new information. Do you know anything
It's
about
nonsense. Yeah.
Oh, it's not.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
well, good.
Oh, nonsense. It's YouTube and silly rumors on the internet. No one has been back to the Edmund Fitzgerald with a sonar for decades now. We're hoping that will change, but the Canadian government
But the Canadian
guards it.
government controls it, right?
They do. It's the only one of 3 shipwrecks that they've said in the Great Lakes that we can't go visit on without a permit.
And the reason it's in Canadian waters, correct?
Part of it, yeah. My documentary and my new book talk about how the bow is likely in American waters.
So if you dove on the bow, Canadians said nothing, can't say anything about
The
it. Right?
question is, if Rick brings his boat and all of his TV gear out there, will they arrest him and take all his toys? So
Well,
I'm
not
not
if you
about
stay
that.
on the American side of the line.
Or if I bring Coast Guard that will prove that I'm on the line. There's actually no line out there. It just
Yeah,
looks
I know
like
that.
a wave. So it would be tough to do it without having some kind of intervention from the government on our side to prove that that's where the line was. And it also comes down to ethics on whether or not I want to upset
Well,
the
yeah,
families.
no, I understand that.
But I walk that line every time that I think that it's worth going down to see these things. I think that there's more to be discovered down there, and I respect it as a grave site just the same way I do with the thousands of other shipwrecks I've talked about.
And-
So, I think we should be able to visit, even though there are people down there.
And how many new wrecks are discovered each year?
We're seeing between 5 and 6 now. It's unbelievable how we're starting to discover at a rapid pace. The largest shipwreck that was still missing, the Carruthers, was finally found. The largest victim of the 13 storm, where the entire crew vanished. We had 6 of these ships on Lake Huron alone, and we couldn't find the ship. We all thought it was in Canadian water, and Dave Trotter and his gang went out there and surveyed, I think, over 20,000 miles back and forth. Oh, yeah, they mapped pretty much all of the Michigan side of Lake Huron, and they discovered this wreck.
Well, I would think today, with the electronics available to us, that you could map the bottom without her diving, just from
They're doing
a
it.
ship,
Yeah.
and you can see what's down there.
Yeah, NOAA has been doing this actively for the last couple of years, where they're going out with autonomous vehicles that can just go underwater, scan. They don't have to worry too much about the waves and such, and they're doing a great job. The problem is we're not getting a lot of cooperation from NOAA
They're
of
not
giving us
telling
what
you
they're
where
finding.
it is, yeah.
You bet, and I get part of it because they don't want people to go and ravage these wrecks and take all the the things off of them. I partially get that, but there are those of us who are good eggs who would only use that, to chronicle it, to go out and dive it. And the government, quite frankly, doesn't have enough money to be able to spend the time or the money to get cameras to go down and do every
So
wreck.
I just don't understand, if they're not going to tell everybody where they are, why they're bothering to do it in the first place.
Most of it is for navigation aids. They're going out to make sure it's safe boating and make sure that the bottom is,
Deep enough that you don't have to worry about hitting one. And
Absolutely, but they are going into 800-foot parts and parts that are definitely not, a place where we'd worry about that. So I think that the information that they find, I hope they'll become more free with it. Wisconsin's been a little bit better about releasing the stuff that they're finding in Lake Michigan. They have a brand new sanctuary as well, but they have a better partnership with groups like WUA, the Underwater Archaeology Society.
talking about sanctuaries and underwater parks and all that, what's it legal to do in Michigan waters?
It's never been legal to take anything off the bottom. Now, this is something that people always thought, well, by the 1980 we'd change the rules. The truth is, if anything was worth more than $20, you're not allowed to take it. It's claimed by the state. Where the borderline goes for Wisconsin and Michigan on Lake Michigan, it's right down the middle. So if it's on our side and it's not buried, the problem is that divers have found wrecks. They've said, these are significant, like Harry Zeik found the Lady Elgin, where 400 people had lost their lives, and the muskets that were down there were of value to him, and he spent over $100,000 proving that he had paid the insurance company a premium that owned the shipwreck, and he won the right to have that. We see this with another diver in the northern part of Lake Michigan who's claimed the wreck and kept it.
He owns the shipwreck.
Absolutely. Sadly, he had a heart attack, and now all of that stuff that's come up from this Civil War is all falling apart because there literally isn't any way to preserve that. There's no budget to do it, and there's no museum that'll touch them because
Out
of
of curiosity, once he paid the insurance company and owned the vessel, did that take the state out of the picture in terms of restricting what he could do on it?
Here's the problem. The state was given, as part of the court ruling, they were given permission to go to the access and film what's there. And once they went there, the coordinates got leaked out and stuff started disappearing. Now we're seeing things that finally showed up at the museum, the Maritime Museum in Chicago. One of the muskets, a watch turned up that turned out to be one of the publishers from the London Illustrated News. Big headlines everywhere about how it was returned to the family, but the question is, who does it belong to? It belonged to Harry Zeik, but there's all these gray areas on whether or not it was really legally brought up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions about this stuff, and as a preservationist, I like to see stuff stay down there, but it's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's rusting away.
Talking to Rick Mixter, who's going to be in town on the 21st doing a presentation for the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society. Don Moran with us, too, from the Society, where he heads it up. We'll be back with more after these notes.
Looking for a unique space for your next...
Try to track those things, even in maps.
Because, I mean, if somebody said shipbuilding on the Saginaw River, first name that comes to mind is...
Oh, the Daniel J. Morrell. Yeah, for most of it.
The yard name.
Oh, that would come out of the Wheeler yard, yeah. And Wheeler was huge. If you think before, though, that's where Crosswaith worked, was what is now Wheeler's Landing in Bay City. All of that area has 150 years of shipbuilding. We saw vessels coming out of here, sailing vessels, as early as 40s, I think was the earliest one that was built. And going into the mega ships, Davidson building the massive wooden ships like the Pretoria that we'll talk about, the largest wooden ship ever built in the world at the time, and it sank in a giant storm in 1905.
Over 330 feet long.
Oh, it's amazing. To me, the stuff that's come out, the Defoe Yard, the World War II history, the
Defoe
USS
is
Rich.
probably the most well-known in terms
I think so.
of name.
Oh, yeah, and because it did not only shipbuilding, and it did build 2 freighters, too, they also did a lot of the conversions for famous shipwrecks like the Cedarville. So Defoe had an incredible era, and then go into the Jupiter explosion, too. It wasn't built in the river, but, it was definitely torn apart at Defoe's yard, which is now the scrapyard at Hirschfield, or whatever they call it now.
I tell a story about the Jupiter. I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I was staying with Bob Traxler.
Oh, wow.
And we were sitting in his living room in his condo. Television was on, and there comes the pictures. And Bob sat straight up in his chair because he heard where it was, That night was shot. He was on the phone for the rest of the night.
I got to believe it.
And it was unbelievable looking at those images.
To be there was first Avery and Brando had the best shot. Brando was on the bridge. Avery was on the bridge. I was way over by the company, the oil company location. So yeah. I was hidden, but we were right there when the governor, Blanchard, came in. We had 2 nights on that shipwreck. And then later when I walked the deck of that melted Jupiter, that's what really got me hooked into shipwrecks. I mean, you think about the largest tanker ever lost on the Great Lakes, and we were eyewitnesses to what happened. I was there, sadly, when the first crewman, the only crewman, was found.
How did they let you on that ship in 2 days?
It cooled down fast enough. Boots and Coots put it out with a foam that we're still discovering now wasn't good for our Great Lakes. Yeah. Right. But they got it out, and that was the important part. And the heroism that came out of there from the Coast Guard to refasten that ship that was almost ready to drift down and cause more damage. That story is just amazing. In fact, I did an entire podcast on it. It's an hour long at shipwreckpodcast.com. I think that story has been largely forgotten. But we're lucky because there's a new book coming out. A gentleman from one of the local newspapers has written an incredible book that I was able to preview.
On the Jupiter?
Yeah, and it's going to be an amazing take on a story that I think a lot of the local people certainly remember, but most of the folklore is faded.
We have the artifacts, or some of the artifacts from the vessel. We have the transom off the vessel.
Some of the artifacts.
Yeah.
The transom.
Oh, yeah. And the fire, the flag that was burned, and the many of the jackets that
ship's
were taken
bell.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. transom is not a small item.
No, they had the pilot house for a while, but it was so big there was nothing they could do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. That that's one of those tragedies in some ways that we'll never forget. I mean, it's an indelible image as far as this area goes in the river.
Oh, if you think about the years and just working in news, my first real baptism was the flood of '86, and coming here with Channel 12, walking through Zilwaukee in water that I later found out was half sewage. So we literally cover the big stories, and the Fitzgerald body find was certainly part of that. When TV5 did their list of the top 10 stories over the last 50 years, it was amazing to see how many I'd been a part of. The train derailment. You and I were both in a helicopter going to do the boat races. When that happened, we were first on the scene, and just an amazing memory.
And what's funny about that is the fact we would not have been first on the scene if the helicopter had not had a problem.
That's right.
But he landed in our backyard here, and he had sand in his pedals. It was an open pedal design.
Yeah.
And he had this rough feel about it when he did the pedals, which control, of course, your tail rotor. And we spent an hour vacuuming and cleaning those pedals so that we could go. He finally said, "Yeah, it feels good now," and we took off. And we took off, and there it was. It just happened.
You could have mentioned to me that there were problems with the helicopter before we took off.
No, I tell you that.
It was fantastic, and to be there, and to see the response of the incredible firefighters, the emergency personnel.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was just a true honor to be there and tell those stories.
There was one of the crewmen that couldn't swim. I believe he was from Pennsylvania, and he jumped off the ship and drowned.
Oh, on the Jupiter,
The Jupiter, yeah.
And we have the mast from the Jupiter. It's about 65 feet long.
Wow.
And we've had talking relationships with the folks at the Edson, because that's the near proximity to where the fire occurred. And we'd like to re-erect that mast as a memorial tribute to that lost crewman.
Build a base on land and stick it up.
Wow.
That'd be interesting. What got you into marine history, Don?
Well, I grew up near the Coquitlam River and was one of the river rats. We lived in the river as kids, just about. And my father worked at Coquitlam Wood Products, also Steinecker Hydroplane in Coquitlam, Michigan, where they built the first hydroplane to go 200 miles an hour in a four-man shop where only two guys ever finished high school. And I was well into adulthood before I learned that my father wasn't one of those that finished high school. He just wanted to go work with his dad as a carpenter, and had taught himself how to build boats. And so our family, everything revolved around boats all my life.
How old is the Historical Society?
35 years. Don Comtus, who couldn't be here today, was a gentleman that starting in high school, started researching the lumber history when Saginaw Bay City was the lumber capital of the world. And that delved in, after his research with the lumber, delved into the shipbuilding industry, where there were 500 commercial vessels built along the Saginaw River. And a newspaper article interview turned into a group of guys that started calling him about information, and they started meeting for coffee once a month and decided they ought to have some sort of formal organization.
Why Saginaw? The fact that it was a lumber capital, that must have been the reason. I mean, yeah, we had to have water, we had the river, but why shipbuilding here?
Well, you had the timber, and you had the water, and there was out of necessity would maybe be the easiest way to put it. Necessity, and you had the resources.
And if you look at the trees, not only the pine that we had for the decking, but the oak was so critical, and it went all the way up into Gladwin. So we had oak shipbuilding as long as Davidson could build ships.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break, come back with our guests. We're talking to Rick McStir and Don Warren about the Great Lakes, and Rick has a program coming up on the 21st for the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society. We'll have more on that. Take a moment to talk about my friends at Quick Lane Freeland and McDonald Ford. Quick Lane Freeland, of course, is where you'd go for all of your routine maintenance. Everything from oil changes and batteries, right up to tires and brakes. Speaking of tires, of course, they sell all their tires at just $5 over cost. And guess what, folks? You live in Michigan. Winter's not over yet. It'll be back. And there is a difference between winter tires and all-season tires. We've asked John from Quick Lane Freeland to talk about that for a few seconds.
Hello, Art. Yes, winter tires are made with a pliable rubber compound that includes silica to stay flexible and maintain grip in freezing temperatures. Unlike harder all-season tires, which stiffen and lose traction in the cold, this flexible compound allows the tire to better conform to the road surface, providing superior grip and traction on snow and ice to keep you safe.
Thanks, John. Keeping you safe, of course, is the number one job of Quick Lane Freeland. And while you're there, why don't you walk on over to McDonald Ford? It's on their property, and take a look at all the new Ford product and their pre-owned lot. And I want to talk about the pre-owned lot for a minute. Couple of vehicles. One, I'm driving one of their vehicles now. It is a 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee Summit model. It is loaded and it is gorgeous and a great ride. It's just they don't just have Fords on their used lot. And I bought a vehicle from them last year. I bought a Lincoln Aviator. They have, you name the brand, chances are they can have it for you there on the lot, or they'll find it for you. Stop out today and visit Quick Lane Freeland and McDonald Ford. Two names standing ready to help you with all your automotive needs for 2026.
Retirement is more than
And we're back with you. In studio with me is Rick Mixter, a great shipwreck historian of the Great Lakes Bay region, and also Don Morin from the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society, where he is president. And if you have any questions or comments you'd like to chat with Rick about any shipwrecks or things of that nature, you can give us a call at 989-752-6111. On the 21st of March, his presentation, Valley Girls, Shipwrecks from the Saginaw Valley, will be presented by the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society. When you say shipwrecks from the Saginaw Valley, these are wrecks of ships built here?
Absolutely. In fact, one of them fits right into my brand new book I'm writing right now that's called Last Witness, Sole Survivors. The Daniel J. Morrell broke in 1966. It was built in 1906, right at Wheeler's Landing, which is now currently called that. It was back then the Wheeler Yard. And at the time, with the Townsend was the largest ship on the Great Lakes. So here's a giant freighter that broke, the largest ever lost on Lake Huron. It's really the big story that comes out of the Bay City region. But we've got a lot of smaller ships, the Pretoria. There's so many different connections. The USS Rich that was exploded during the D-Day invasion that came from Bay City. In this revolutionary process they had of building destroyer escorts coming out of Defoe. The history here is so ripe. And as I tell people, I talk about the shipwrecks, but we only had a lot of shipwrecks from this area because we built so many. Hundreds of hulls came out of here into World War II and into even the Australian Navy.
The Edson is an example of the class, but wasn't built here.
No, sadly it wasn't. Even the Coast Guard cutters that were built here, we didn't have a great example, although there was one that they sunk as a dive attraction. But again, that one wasn't built in Bay City either. The Escanaba, being the big class that was built here, was also lost in a tragic explosion that we still don't know today why it happened.
And how many of these wrecks are within, say, 50 miles of here?
I would say, probably the most dangerous place on the Great Lakes was the tip of Michigan's thumb. We lost more ships there, but most of them were recovered because it was just horrible areas of rocks. Because of, like Don mentioned, the lumber industry, this was the place to get your trees from until we cut all the trees down by 1900. And then we started borrowing trees, cutting them down in Canada and dragging them here in huge tugboats and floats of mile-wide logs that would come in until Canada finally put tariffs that wouldn't allow us to do it.
that wasn't so much about the logging industry as it was about the need for the lumber for shipbuilding and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, and it was the traffic that was coming out of here. I mean, if you think of the millions and millions of board feet, so much of it, too, that even helped Chicago after their big fire in 1872, 1871. So this is really the area that grew, and then unfortunately, once the trees were gone, even our salt industry that was here, that was incredible, among the best in the world. Morton Salt getting a lot of their salt from here. It all dried up. As soon as we lost those trees, we lost our ability to really fire the pans that would make the salt. So within a couple of years, all of these incredible businesses that were along the river vanished. And by the 1920s, all we had was some hardwood flooring that was being done.
And when was the last ship built at Defoe?
That's a great question. Do you know when the last one that came out? I mean, the Hutchinson was one of the big ones, and then we had modifications that came out. I would say 57, 58.
Well, no, I worked there's summer job when I was going to Delta, and that was 65 and 66, and we were working on the Navy ships that went to Australian Navy. Yep. And I'm not sure when those finished up.
That's interesting you say the Australia, because that's where one of the hulls that they were trying to get before the Edson was in Australia, but it was already just a shell.
They did. Yeah. And all three of the vessels that were built here were all sunk around the continent of Australia so that divers can go visit them. And the Brisbane still, I think, has its guns on it, too. So it's an incredible dive attraction within 100 feet of water. And the ocean has kind of taken its own now. It's full of coral and stuff that I'm sure the builders that were working on it in Bay City would have never thought. But they served through the Vietnam conflict, and they served Australia very well. And then we have the Nore, of course, that found the Titanic with Bob Ballard. There's incredible ships that came out of here that have a great legacy.
I wonder how many are still floating around.
The Nora is still floating. They haven't scrapped her out yet. I know that there's a couple. The Jimmy L. tugboat that used to be called the Naugatuck, which was in a tandem launch with the Raritan that saved the guys from the Escanaba. Imagine in World War II, the Escanaba blows up. Tragically, 100 people are lost. The tugboat that comes and rescues the two survivors is from Bay City as well. That's the legacy that we have here.
We have the yard half model for the Nore. There's many artifacts from the Defoe family that have been given to us at our museum. So there's a yard half model. It's probably about 4 feet long of the Nore, and you can come and see that at our museum.
All right, take a break, come back with our guests. Down 4-0 going into the third period. They won the game in overtime, 5-4.
Wow.
Unbelievable. With me, Rick Mixter, who's going to be doing a presentation on the 21st at the Saginaw River Marine Historical Society Museum. And it is a presentation called Valley Girls, Shipwrecks from the Saginaw Valley. Do we know how many ships were built on the Saginaw River in total?
Over 500.
Over the span of many decades.
Many decades.
Yeah.
That's commercial. That's not counting the pleasure craft and smaller vessels that were built. That's commercial vessels, over 500. And we have a book that Don Comptus and some of the other fellows put together a few years ago.
Dave Swayze.
Going back to when would you say was the beginning of the shipbuilding period here?
1840s. I'm trying to remember the first one. Yeah. But the big boom was when we went into the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s is when it got big, and then they switched to steel. And Wheeler took over.
Turn of the century, it became steel.
And then Amship took over Wheeler Yard and pretty much ran them out. They ended up switching to Lorraine, where a lot of the big ones came out of.
And of the ships that were built here, I wonder how many are still sailing.
They just finally, in fact, you got a piece of the Ojibwa, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Hutchinson, or which one was that?
It was built as the Hutchinson at Defoe, and it went to scrap. Well, it's almost 3 years ago. So we went to Canada and took a look at what we could have from the ship. And we got the ship logo, the Ojibwe symbol, off the stack. And when you see a vessel go by, it looks like a postage stamp, but in reality it's 6 feet tall and weighs 280 pounds, and there was one on each side of the stack. So we have that.
Those are the
stack-
company logos.
That
Oh,
was
yeah.
company logos. And we have a porthole and some lights. Also, we have the two mast off the ship, and we have the steering pole that would have projected off the bow. So when you're steering the ship, you got a pointer out in front of you.
But the Naugatuck is still sailing. It's breaking ice. In fact, Green Bay